Welcome to the Cambridge Public Library. We are thrilled to have Youth Underground from Central Square Theater and Circle, the Center for Information and Research on Civic Engagement from Tufts University, here this evening in celebration of National Voter Registration Day. Tonight we'll begin with a staged reading of Act Up and Vote, written by playwright Betsy Bard, directed by Vincent, Ernest, and performed by the delegates and ambassadors of Youth Underground. Following the performance, Circle's Peter de Guzman will facilitate a talkback with the actors, creative team, and you, the audience, on salient themes in the performance and the relevance to the issues facing young voters today. I now welcome up to the stage the director of Act Up and Vote, Vincent Ernest Siders.
Thank you very much for showing up today. Here for Act Up and Vote. This is my glorious ensemble. Youth on the ground. You're going to get a taste of some investigative theater today, and I want you to keep in mind that we are no respective in terms of gender. You know, we may have males doing female roles, females doing male roles, old people doing young people's roles, young people doing old people's roles, African Americans being European Americans, and vice versa, so on and so forth. So take that, digest that, enjoy that. Let's make it happen.
Welcome, Generation Z. My name is Andrea, and I'm your leader for today. You all have been randomly selected to participate in this focus group instead of going to class because there is a great interest in your generation's attitudes and beliefs. I'll explain in more detail about the purpose of this gathering as soon as we're all clear about the name.
Huh? Name? We already all have names.
I'm referring to the name for our generation. It's important that we're properly identified and labeled for the research. I chose Generation Z for us because we are the last generation. So now that we're properly identified and everything and labeled, let me explain our mission for today.
Oh, wait, what? What did you call us?
Oh, Generation Z? You know, because we are the last generation. So now that you know the name, let me continue.
Wait, so we're the last generation? Like we're doomed?
No, of course not. Now, I selected the name Z because it's the last letter in the alphabet, and the first members of our generation were born after 1995, which is the very end of the last century. I was born in 1999, so the name Generation Z is a perfect fit for me.
I don't like the name. It's depressing. And besides, I was born in 2002, so it's a lame game for me.
Well, we have to be called something so we can be quickly referred to as a group. You see, researchers, reporters, politicians, and lots of other people are trying to learn about our hopes and dreams for the future of America. They want to understand what we really care about and what experiences might move us to become actively engaged in our communities. And the burning question, what might motivate you, all of us, to either register to vote or vote in the upcoming election?
Hold on, you said vote. That's a great idea. Let's all vote on a name. For the people, by the people.
Well, sure, okay. Let's hear your suggestions.
Generation Fixer-Upper? Things are a mess.
After all, let's be honest. We do love our phones now. Generation Global. We are the first generation to connect with peers all over the world.
Generation Snap.
Generation Memes.
No!
I don't like all the parts of me being dissected just so I can be labeled one thing.
We have to have a name. My dad's a baby boomer. My mom's Generation X. My sister is Gen Y. My brother's a millennial. My grandpa, he's the OG. He's the greatest generation.
Goodness gracious, that's why I'm the best. Gee, Officer Krupke, what are we to do? Gee, Officer Krupke, Krupp you.
Generation Scapegoat. You know that they'll blame everything on us.
Let's just go Generation Doomed.
Come on, don't give up. Generation Persistence. You know that we're going to have to be super persistent if we want to change things up.
Oh, that's it. Generation Change.
Let's try to make it a little more original, add a little mystery Delta?
I got it. Delta is the fourth letter in the Greek alphabet, and in physics, the symbol is often used to express change. It seems like we're pretty much unanimously decided on Generation Delta, but let's take a vote.
Okay. All in favor of Generation Delta, raise your hands. Okay. Now that we've finally settled on what we're going to be called, I will describe our mission for the day. Generation Delta had a dismal turnout in the last election. Voting is the most basic American responsibility, and only a minority of us voted. We are going to try to start figuring out why many members of our generation did not go to the polls in 2016, by broadening the conversation to explore our hopes and dreams for the world that we want to live in. There are 4 million of you who will turn 18 in 2018. This year, plus all of my friends who are older. I mean, we definitely have the numbers to change, and numbers will decide our fate, so it's possible to live up to our name. Change. Delta, the name you chose. I'm just saying.
So what are we supposed to do? Sit around and just talk and wait for them to bring us pizza?
I know you said randomly selected, but it had to be really random because I'm not gonna lie, I'm just not interested in voting at all. I mean, I don't think that it really matters because it's not gonna make a real difference in our lives anyways.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And I think the point of making the participation in this group random was to make sure that we included all points of view. I mean, so am I just asking you to participate with as open a mind as possible? Now, where was I?
You were about to tell us what we were supposed to talk about before the pizza arrives.
Oh. Well, we'll listen to each other's stories about our experiences of day-to-day life in school, about our families, about our friends. We are the influences that make us really care about something. Let's all think about how we can have a hand in the world that we want to create. And voting has a role in that too.
Is it really just up to us to brainstorm all these ideas?
No. We will get some help. There's actually a surprise visitor on their way. But in the meantime, let's all get started.
I think we should start with our earliest memories about voting to set the vibe.
So, when I was a little girl, there was a beautiful garden in our neighborhood. And every time we walked by, I would ask my mom if I could pick just one flower. She would say, no. Because if everybody just picked one flower, there would be no beautiful garden. So it was election day, and my mom asked me if I had voted. I replied no, because I didn't see how my one vote would matter. She replied that if everyone decided not to cast their one vote, there would be no democracy.
My dad would always take me and my brother with him when he voted. All 3 of us would cut into that little curtain booth, and during the lecture on how lucky we were to have this opportunity, we would mostly just start pushing and fighting and acting up. Our voices were definitely heard. So in my family, we were all about voting. In some families, it's drink. Don't talk about politics at family gatherings. But in my family, it was don't drink. Talk about politics.
It was a mortal sin not to vote. We all participated 100% in celebrating Election Day, as if it was a festive holiday. In fact, the big joke in my family was that my sister was born on Election Day, and no one noticed.
My parents vote because they know if they don't vote, they're probably helping somebody else in some way. My mother is obsessed about voting. If you are not a voter, you are not a good, trustable, reliable character. My mom even tells this story that she broke up with her boyfriend because he didn't go and vote. He was like,
I was too tired to go and vote.
and she was like, what did you say? He said,
I was just too damn tired to go and vote. And it doesn't even matter anyway.
my mom was like, I will have none of that attitude. We are done. It is over. Goodbye.
Even if you think your vote doesn't matter because you live in a solid, democratic, progressive, liberal community, it's still good to vote because you get a check by your name. So when the candidates are out campaigning, they will actually knock on your door to hear your concerns because you are a potential voter.
I'm sorry, I just don't have any memories of Election Day. There are polls and voting and leftover muffins, cookies, bake sales, polling stations.
I don't even remember the bake sale, but I do remember my dad complaining that if they really wanted you to vote, they would make it a holiday.
Not exactly a memory, but if they really wanted you to vote, there would be an app on your phones for it.
So yeah, voting is a big thing in my family. I remember in 2008, when I was around like 6, my parents said we wouldn't be going to the Cape because we were going to have a staycation. Like, yay, a staycation! It was this new word that made all the difference, from being totally bored at home to having a fun adventure at home. Now they made up another new word, motivation. Like, yay, motivation! She even made up a slogan, motivation. If you voted, it's been noted. My mom posted a video all over Facebook. Motivation, motivation. Really? You know, it's something to think about. Motivation. It's been noted that you voted. I hate to break it to y'all, but I highly doubt this new word would provide the burst of enthusiasm that make voting exciting. I think something like serving free pizza could get you to the polls.
I don't know about pizza, but back in the day, alcohol was legit. George Washington actually lost his first election to some legislative office in 1755 because apparently he didn't make voting fun enough. But he was a quick learner. When he ran again in 1758, he instructed his campaign manager to make sure to treat the voters to a drink as soon as they arrived at the polls. 160 gallons of alcohol were provided to 391 voters. To be precise,
28 gallons of rum.
50 gallons of rum punch.
34 gallons of wine.
46 gallons of beer.
And 2 gallons of cider royale.
Washington wrote to his manager,
My only fear is that you spent with too sparing a hand.
no worries, he easily won that election. Unfortunately, voting laws were passed to end serving booze, mostly because no one could remember either who they voted for or who were the actual candidates.
If laws could be passed to take the booze out of elections, you'd think they could get money out of elections. It seems like money, more than people, has become the driving force of democracy. I hate to be so cynical, but at least back then, all the voters got treats from the candidates, which was actually in the spirit of democracy. Now it's just the rich donors of candidates who get these special treats, which also really takes out the spirit of voting. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I got you. Money is taking the spirit out of democracy. But look, I think we should start by figuring out a way to put the spirit back into voting. And no disrespect, but not that motivation thing. But for real, we can scoop their slick strategy. Remember, we have the numbers in our favor.
Let's put the fun back into voting. Let's make democracy great again. Ideas for our own special treats, anyone?
Free pizza at the polls.
A day off from school on election day.
Holiday for everyone.
The little I voted sticker gets you an entrance to a concert for free.
Who wore it best to the polls, and the winner gets free pizza for life.
Speaking of pizza, you know what would really put the fun back into voting?
Say it.
Let's lower the voting age to 16. We really know how to party.
And we're also democratic. So let's take a vote on the best idea.
I think we should vote by numbering our choices. That way we'll feel more represented and like our vote actually matters.
Do you mean like ranked voting, like how Cambridge votes for candidates?
Yeah.
What's ranked voting?
Google it.
The first time I was eligible to vote, I didn't. It was a midterm election day. I was at my friend's house. I remember her mother wasn't home. So we snuck into her mom's bedroom, ate, and made it into a luxurious spa. To this day, she still has no idea that we did that.
We had our own little spa day.
We wore her mom's big comfy bathrobes as we fully enjoyed lounging around watching TV. Oh, and we had just painted our fingernails. I remembered suddenly saying to my friend, "Today's election day. Should we run down to the polls?" We kind of just looked at each other, comfy and cozy in our bathrobes, mid-spa day. I don't know. I mean, is it worth smudging our nails? We both shrugged and said, "It doesn't matter anyways." And we continued on with our various spa treatments. But still, I remember that feeling in the pit of my stomach, the disempowerment, and the discouragement that I felt when I said, it doesn't matter. Maybe my one vote might not have mattered. That might be true. And the feeling is real. But the overwhelming feeling that I felt when my own voice didn't matter, mattered more to me. I still remember that feeling. I felt the disempowerment all through my body.
Here's something else that is deeply disturbing. The result of a recent survey shows that thousands of kids between the age of 18 and 24 stated that 25% of our generation do not believe that democracy is the best form of government. One of us in every four think that it would be fine to live under an authoritarian government because they think that democracy is just a bad way to run a country. 1 in 4 of us is willing to give up the right to protest or resist a regime which deprives others of the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Could someone please Google authoritarian government?
Got it again. An authoritarian government is one in which political power is concentrated in one leader, referred to as a dictator, or a group of leaders, typically unelected by the people, who possess exclusive, unaccountable, and arbitrary power.
Hold up, that's interesting. Is it just me, or does it not seem that everyone is talking about democratic socialism?
Probably because of the recent upset election by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and also because the super rich just seem to keep getting richer and richer, while everyone else seems to be getting poorer and poorer with an even smaller and smaller safety net.
I Googled it. Democratic socialism states everyone should have the right to free health care, free child care, free college education. Woo! Finland has that form of government, and it is the happiest country in the world. No brainer. I'm joining that party.
You actually think that that can happen here? It can't hurt to dream big, but that's like a hallucination. What kind of spirit are you on? And I just want to point out that I'm 16, so my views are not represented in that 18 to 24 survey. I haven't given up on democracy. I'm all in, and I don't even have to Google it.
If we are really to appreciate the benefits of living under a democracy, teachers have to watch how they handle power in situations that involve us. So getting back to what it would be like living under an authoritarian government, it sure felt like that the time that I was sent out of class. The dictator, teacher, said that I had a jewel in my backpack. He didn't give me a chance to explain, so I just had to sit around the principal's office for hours looking like I was in big trouble. Of course, it turns out it was a thumb drive. Like I tried to explain 1,000,000 times. There was no due process. I was just assumed guilty until proven innocent. And what made it even worse, I never got a real apology. More like sorry, not sorry.
Excuse me, I just want to point out that Wakanda is ruled by a dictator, and you know, that seems to be working out fine. The leader of Wakanda gets appointed by being the best fighter in a single battle. Everyone agrees that the throne is secured through this bloody spectacle. And before you get all judgmental, the outcome of our presidential elections is decided by the Electoral College vote, not the popular vote. To state the obvious, you can still win even if you lose the popular vote.
Excuse you, I just want to point out that Wakanda, it's a fake place. So that's fake news.
Wait. What is the Electoral College all about? Or is that fake news too?
Don't look at me. I just moved here. I have no idea where it is.
You mean there's another college someplace around here?
I think the Electoral College is a system more than a place. Can someone Google it?
I got you. It's a body of people representing all the states who formally cast votes in an election for the president. This system replaced the popular vote and was introduced in 1787 by James Madison as a way for the South not to be overpowered by the North. He proposed that enslaved people be counted as 3/5 of a person when deciding how many electoral votes a state would receive.
Wait, whoa, what? Is that fact or fake history?
Well, on the subject of history, I think it would be a good idea for everyone to take a refresher course in high school on how the government actually works. Not that I'm looking for more requirements to fill, but we're a little ignorant about the facts. I don't just mean how a bill becomes a law, which we memorized like years ago, but understanding really the checks and balances in the three branches of government. The separation of those branches prevents an individual or a group of people from abusing their power to the point that they could destroy democracy. Learning about the enduring strength of this system would not only increase our civic education, but also decrease our anxiety about the current state of affairs. Oh, and by the way, here's another fun fact. The 14th Amendment turned 150 years old this past July 28th.
Okay, thanks. I'll Google the 14th Amendment later, but let's get back to Wakanda. Just because it's a fake place, it doesn't mean that we can't have real opinions about their form of government. And also fake, but really cool. Like, T'Challa has the ability to get valuable governing advice from wise elders who are dead, which is much better than getting advice from a Russian oligarch or a North Korean dictator. Okay, they're alive, but still.
So, how do we conjure up a dead wise elder? Let me show you.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a he. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a he.
I've come back on Earth on my 200th birthday, though I can't be exactly sure of my age. No records were kept for those born into slavery. And I have a new name from the one that I was enslaved with. I chose my own name, Frederick Douglass. The view from up there looking down on y'all is that the situation is pretty bad, and that says a lot from someone who's seen the trouble that I've seen. You're young. Really young. You know, without a struggle, there can't be any progress. Democracy may not be perfect, but you can demand power in a democracy. One way of getting power is by voting. I fought my whole life so as not to be denied that right. You may ask why I wanted the right to vote, because by depriving me of this right would be declaring before the world that my race is unfit to form an intelligent judgment about candidates for elective office. It leads us to undervalue ourselves and to feel that we have no possibilities like other men. We are not 3/5 of a human being. Power concedes nothing without a demand. We demanded the right to vote. We got that right in 1870 when the 15th Amendment to the Constitution was passed.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a he. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a he.
Whoa. We just heard a speech in person by one of the greatest orators in history. This must be the strange new normal everyone's talking about. You just can never predict what's going to happen, but I believe that most people are innately curious. Some people dull their curiosity, right? By like cell phones and all these things that supposedly give us more information, but if all we do is scroll down Instagram all day, we're not really learning anything. It's a really big world out there. There are 8 billion people. 8 billion whole people living on this earth. And obviously we can't know them all, but at least we have to be curious so that we can make connections to the people around us.
Whenever I go somewhere, I ask, what is it like to live here? Asking questions like, why does the world work the way it does? What do you care about? What scares you? What excites you? What makes you happy? What makes you feel respected? Asking questions like that, awakens your sense of connection to other folks so you can begin to look at the world in a way that can make it better for other people.
Yeah, I even talk to people who live in my neighborhood, or people who I see on the TV. What's your name? Where are you going?
Exactly. Like you ask them questions and you learn about people, the people that you interact with every day. A lot of them have really interesting stories.
So I was talking to one of my friends, and I was like, "Where's your family from?" You know, da da da. And he was like, "I don't know. I think somewhere in Africa, but I'm not really sure." Like, all right, you should find out. He lives with his grandfather, so I go over to his house on a Saturday morning, and I go up to meet his grandfather, and we start talking. And it turns out that his grandfather fought against the Portuguese in Angola in Angola's war for independence. Angola won its independence in the late 70s, and this dude lived in guerrilla warfare. He lived out in the wilderness, which he described as the bush, fighting against the Portuguese military to win Angola's independence. He went and trained with people in South Africa, Nelson Mandela's people. So he was all over different parts of Africa doing the solidarity work, learning how to get independence from people who actually already had their independence. He was moving in these circles. That's a crazy story. Like, your grandfather's a hero. You gotta talk to him. We have to. He's old and he's not gonna be here forever.
My brother and I shared a room, and it was on the second floor, so every day, multiple times a day, I had to walk up and down the staircase to get between our bedroom and our kitchen and the bathroom and anything else downstairs. On that staircase were tons of anti-war posters that my dad brought from El Salvador. There is one that I will never forget. It's pink. There is a woman, and she is a mother with a child on her back and a rifle in her hand. I would see these posters. They're beautiful. They're artwork. It has always been crazy for me to think about my father fighting the war at age 14, fighting for the betterment of his family, of his people. I grew up with these pictures. I grew up knowing that my father was in this war he didn't want to be in as a child, and then came to this country to do anti-war work. I believe that fight is a part of me and has been my whole life. I was that baby in the stroller going to the protest. There's nothing I would do. Activism is in my blood.
It was an action protest. Me and 3 other people chained ourselves with bike locks, 3 bike locks, to the front door of City Hall. We were all connected, and the chain was around my neck. And yeah, it was uncomfortable because I was twisted into this awkward position. We all got there around 5 in the morning. It was a protest against the gentrification of our neighborhood. And you know, sometimes the developers come to community meetings and they say, "We want to hear from you. This building is going up and we'd like your input so we can make changes and know what you would like to see and blah, blah." But you know, I've noticed no one takes notes. I mean, if you care and want to remember what is being said, you take notes. They don't really care, but I do because it's where I live. It's where most of my extended family lives, and it's where my friends live. Our protest was to make sure that our concerns were heard. There was a vote before the city council to raise the affordable housing rate from 15% to 20%, and we wanted to make sure that it was going to pass. We had been chained together for 9 hours, and it became clear that we weren't going to leave on our own. And around 2 o'clock, the police came, and we got arrested. And I also got in trouble with my parents.
And it wasn't only about making sure that the vote passed, but it was also about bringing attention to the need for more affordable housing in our neighborhood. Take this note. We want affordable housing that looks like it fits in our neighborhood. We don't want just new high-rise apartment buildings where 20% of the people who can't afford the high rent get to live there, but aren't really welcomed by the other residents. Take this note in all caps. We want a world in which we can be comfortable in our own homes, now and in the future. We're young, and we may want to be able to afford to live here when we're older, like 30, and even stay and raise our families where we grew up. I see you. Don't just sit around and complain about all the changes. Claim your power. Act up and vote.
Martin Luther King says that, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice.
I'm pretty sure he was quoting a minister.
Really?
Why don't you just ask Martin Luther King himself?
Wait, what?
You know, it's a thing. Remember? You can conjure up wise leaders from the past.
Yeah, let's do it.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was he.
You are right, my son. It was a quote from a dear friend who also happened to be a minister. Now listen very carefully. It would be greatly appreciated if someone would take notes. I got you. Now, you are young, strong, and you have even shown yourselves to be extremely flexible. To quote my dear friend again, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I have a strong feeling that it will ultimately be up to your generation, Generation Delta, good choice by the way, to keep the bending towards justice.
Any other words of wisdom?
Right here, talking. There must be a radical redistribution of economic and political power. It will be impossible to have real democracy in a capitalist society where income disparity is so vast. It's incredible that you're thinking like that and making those connections at such a young age. I believe that the evils of capitalism are as real as the evils of militarism and racism. But even when you feel that your rights have been trampled on, you must resist the urge to give up. Don't take what they will try to take from you lying down. And yet, even though it may feel like an impossible challenge, try to make sure words of love are the last thing those people hear. Against all odds, I still hold out hope that it is this love that will bring about miracles in the hearts of men.
Resist, protest, communicate, bend the arc. What else can we do?
I said it a million times back in the day before I was assassinated. It is your responsibility to vote. I marched with people in the civil rights era, beaten within an inch of their lives, and many who even died while fighting for the right to vote. We must always strive to honor their long struggle by never missing an opportunity to vote. I must go, but I will leave you with this. My words. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a he. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a he.
That was awesome. In the true and original sense of the word. I have no words. I mean, when I said surprise visitor, I was thinking more on the lines of a live politician. But in spite of the shock, I think you took good notes. So what matters to you all? What matters to you all? Okay, silence can be golden, I guess. But let's try to communicate what really matters to us, maybe?
I don't want to live in a world where people laugh and imitate those who are disabled. I don't want to live in a world where people bully others by teasing and fighting. I purposely failed all my tests in 3rd grade because I was being bullied so much I wanted to stay back. So I circled in all the wrong answers on a test. I thought about circling in letters so it would spell help, but then I worried that they wouldn't keep me back because they would know that I could really do the work. Even though some kids who were bullied become bullies, that wasn't true for me. I went in the exact opposite direction to protecting the kids who were bullied. My church, which actually became like my family, encouraged me to tell my story. They knew that silence was not going to help me heal. I even became active in their mentoring program, which gives kids the support and skills to deal with bullies. To be honest, I'm not sure if my work around preventing bullying will make me more politically active. But then again, I'm the type of person where anything is possible.
Do you know that our oceans are clogged with plastic waste that threaten the life of all marine animals? They eat these tiny particles of microplastic, thinking that it's plankton, and they choke and they die. Our class felt that the responsible thing to do was make every student aware that buying a plastic bottle and tossing it into a recycling bin is contributing to the extinction of some species. With the help of our teacher, we created a campaign, which included videos and a catchy slogan. Our goal was to ban plastic bottles from our school. Unfortunately, despite our hard work, our mission failed. However, this passion to save marine life from death by plastic has definitely motivated me to stay involved in environmental issues. I plan to continue to come up with new ways to change the way people use and dispose of plastic. I'm hoping to have an impact on their behavior because our future is being shaped by what we all do in the present.
I took an environmental science class where we studied the healing curve. Don't worry, I don't need you to Google it. It's a graph showing increased concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The more molecules in the air, the more heat is trapped, which is why the planet is getting warmer and warmer. And back in the day, I was one of those people who canvassed college campuses, urging students to sign petitions to pass the first global warming cap on greenhouse gas emissions. And I felt a lot of hope for a sustainable future because of my success in helping to pass that legislation. And I learned from that experience, if you got up close and personal with a student while explaining the importance of your petition, instead of just waving your clipboard at them from a distance, they responded by listening and caring enough to sign it. I was even invited to be a speaker at an NPR press conference. I was told that TV cameras were more likely to show up if you have a prop that's catchy. And so I got a Mr. Freezy costume donated for the day. We called it a polar bear, and I had my friend wear this suit holding a "Save Me" sign. It's now my calling to mobilize youth to vote for candidates who have progressive environmental policies that will keep our planet safe and livable for future generations.
Is it me, or is there suddenly a lot of talk about possibly colonizing Mars? I mean, it seems like the 1% are actually just not thinking about just traveling there, but permanently moving there. It makes you wonder, why is this sudden need for a panic room on Mars? What do they know that we don't? Is survival of even our species on Earth under imminent threat?
I imagine a world where everyone deserves the same treatment and respect as everyone else. I remember being little and realizing that I was different because I had two moms, and understanding that some people didn't see that fact as a good thing. When I was born in 2001, gay marriage still wasn't legal in Massachusetts. I was in an airport in Florida on my way back from a school trip when I heard about the 2015 Supreme Court decision. I broke down crying and called my moms. That moment meant so much to me. After so many years of tireless work, pain, and bravery, this basic right finally applied to my family and families like my family all over the country. I think that growing up and feeling like the world doesn't accept you, your family, or your beliefs is not uncommon. Many people don't seem to be able to accept the fact that we are all trying to live our lives as best we can.
A group of us, women, got together and we talked about how it was completely unfair that there was a dress code regulating the length of shorts and type of shirts for only the female students. If the outfit we chose to wear to school was viewed as inappropriate by our deans, we were sent home to change. That experience not only was extremely shaming, but also was a way of policing female bodies. It seemed to us that the rules for how we dressed were enforced to make sure that we would not receive inappropriate attention from the male gaze. It seemed to us that the appropriate way to address the situation was to switch the focus to, and even to teach the male population about an appropriate way to look at women. We actually presented our reasoning to abolish the dress code to the school committee, and they voted in our favor. Now that is democracy at work. And I'm putting you all on notice. Now that I can go to school in the clothes that I want to wear, just like the guys, I plan to make sure that in the future I get paid the same salary as the guys who are doing the same job
high school in the 90s, and back then, vending machines had soda and Gatorade filled with them. One night, I watched a show on TV about how the Coca-Cola company was economically supporting South Africa, and therefore they were supporting apartheid. My best friend and I were horrified. Our very own school was partially responsible for the horrors in South Africa. We immediately got to work to take the Coke out of the machines. We circulated petitions. We went to school committee, we made signs, and we wrote a newspaper article. It worked. At just about the same time that we were finally successful in banning Coca-Cola from our school, we woke up to the news that apartheid ended in South Africa. We made the only conclusion that two teenagers couldn't do. We did it. We ended apartheid. Yeah, we knew it didn't exactly work that way, but the feeling stuck with me. The feeling that a small local action is connected to something bigger. To this day, I stay involved in my local community. Whether it's voting in every election, going to protests, or boycotting companies, I do it. I do it for my teenage self, who is so proud to have made a change in the world. And I do it for my children, who are now teenagers, who are waiting to have their moment to change the world.
Sometimes in class, especially history class, we watch a video about an extremely disturbing event. I vividly remember one about an African-American enslaved woman being examined very graphically by a plantation owner who was thinking of buying her. Sometimes I wish we could just break up into affinity groups in order for us to kind of process the horror we just saw. I know for me, even though many of the white students in the class are my good friends, I am not ready to participate in this discussion on this atrocity that we had just watched. An affinity group would give us time together to grieve and to gather strength because that image of a black woman on the auction block hits you hard. Life hits you hard. There are stories in the media almost daily of racist behavior and violence towards people of color. Some of us experience microaggressions that make us uncomfortable, and we end up not knowing what to say. I want to express my thoughts, but first I need to bond and get extra support from the other students of color, so I will be able to speak in a clear, strong voice. I want to live in a world where telling my truth is not so difficult for me, and for us.
I was at the March for Our Lives protest. We were in Boston in the park. It was completely packed. It was loud, incredibly loud. It was a very, very gray day, gunmetal gray. The largest group of counter-protesters was the NRA. I realized quickly that I knew one of the people there in the NRA. He's a buddy from my high school. We actually write opposing viewpoints for the school newspaper, on computers, in the same room, at the same time, sitting side by side. I'm running for gun control while he's writing against it. Like I said, weird relationship. But then there's the whole issue of the internet, which really emboldens people to say harsher and harsher things because you're hidden behind a screen. As you become angrier and angrier, you get more poisoned against the other side and filled with hate. And then there are the political memes, which are, oh my god. I can't give an example in polite company. Yet, what encouraged me was that me and this buddy, even beyond our computer screens, can still just have a pleasant conversation together in person. At the protest, we had a couple of moments to talk to each other, and we even ended up shaking hands over layers of police lines. That moment felt important because it represented that people are still capable of being people. I really like being an editorialist on a paper. Maybe some of my opinions will change someone's mind, or maybe just lead to a better conversation. Either way, I'm in the mindset that the pen is mightier than the sword. I'm not sure that I'll go to another protest. Maybe.
Oh, good. Here comes the visitor that I was expecting, a live politician.
Please believe that protests do matter. The louder, the better. I know all that organizing and gathering can be frustrating, but it is worth the effort. Now that I work as a politician, let me tell you, change happens in our legislature because high school students stand up, speak out on social media, write letters, call the House of Representatives, and show up to rallies. These things make a real difference in moving legislation up to the top of the agenda. When people come together and focus on one thing together, the politicians, like myself, come together and move stuff up the chain to the point where we actually vote to change laws. Your voices, especially when they're loud, very loud, grab our attention and have an impact on our views.
There are moments in time when a lot of people get together and start trying to figure out how they can make a difference. Like John Lewis says, it is time for each of you as young leaders to get in trouble, good trouble. We put together this event where we planned to block a train that was on its way to Gillette Stadium. We stood in front of the train with signs, Black Lives Matter. We briefly interrupt the lives of people going to a football game. We wanted to make people feel uncomfortable in their routine. Just maybe, by forcing the train to stop, those passengers would read our signs and might think about the lives of those families whose loved ones have been murdered by the police and whose routines won't ever go back to normal. To quote Aretha, I know you've got to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace.
Injustice in our prison systems really matters to me. I recently went on a trip to South Africa where my school theater company performed Richard III to a local medium security prison. The guards reminded us to be vigilant. The men in the prison could be there for any number of reasons. We walked carefully through the halls, we kept our heads down, and we were ushered into an outdoor courtyard where there were around 200 men in bright orange prison jumpsuits staring straight at us. We did what we were there to do, and they were the best audience we've ever had. When my character got thrown to the ground, I could feel them wanting to reach out and help this poor girl who had just been roughed up. And that's when the real reason that we were invited to perform for these men really hit me. We were giving them an opportunity to experience empathy. And it hit me just as hard that I wanted to continue giving these prisoners and prisoners like them these kinds of opportunities. In fact, because of that experience, I now know what I want to spend my life doing.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965, signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson, aimed to overcome barriers imposed by states that prevented African Americans from voting. It took my mom, who was convicted of a non-violent crime, many years after she was out of prison and off parole to get back her right to vote. What's even worse, there are some states that never permit those with a felony record to vote. African Americans are incarcerated at more than 5 times the rate of whites. The imprisonment rate for African American women is twice that of white women. Depriving citizens of their right to vote after they've paid their debt to society disproportionately affects African Americans and blatantly violates the intent of the Voting Rights Act. After I finish law school, I plan to work to remove these barriers and to research candidates that promote policies that do not needlessly criminalize people of color. Vote for them because their voice matters.
My mother left Brazil for Cambridge, and I stayed behind with my grandmother for the next 5 years. And when I was 8 years old, my mom sent for me because she was able to support me. I first learned that I was undocumented when I applied for a job and I didn't have a green card. I hated being described as undocumented because to me, something is usually bad. I was able to apply for a work permit and not risk deportation because of the policy outlined in DACA. DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I don't mind being described as a childhood arrival because it is what it is. This program's existence is being seriously threatened by the current administration. I think all of our protests saved it from being canceled, for now anyways. I used to have big dreams about becoming a citizen one day, and now I have nightmares about being forced to leave everything and everyone that I love.
I saw an 18-year-old girl go literally in 6 months from being a happy teenager, living with her aunt, doing pretty well in school, even though she had very little structure other than her self-motivated attitude, to being reduced to couch surfing at friends' homes, and even some nights living on the street. Her aunt, who's the one person in her life who protected her, was deported and she was kicked out from where she was living. She was completely on her own now. I care about the kids that I pass in the square on the way to school who clearly just spent the nights on the sidewalk. I feel shame, and I wish I could do more than just volunteer at a homeless shelter.
I'm in fashion school, and I spent my junior year in Paris. While I was there, I had an acute episode, a health crisis, which can happen because of my diagnosis of sickle cell. I had to be hospitalized in Paris for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, a similar health crisis occurred a few years back while I was studying in New York City. Even though I had health insurance, the outstanding balance of my hospital stay was $14,000. I was hounded day and night by collection agencies to pay that amount, as if. So you can imagine me worrying about the bill the whole time I was sick in bed in a hospital in Paris. But no worries. I ended up owing nothing. Zero. What is so messed up about America that we can't provide excellent health care for everyone? Even every other developed nation has a Medicare system for all. I'm planning on being a fashion designer, and the sickle cell in its unique crescent shape is going to be the motif of all of my clothes. I'm counting on my runway show next year to bring attention to all those people who live with pre-existing conditions and require frequent health care but can't afford the high costs.
I really hope that bringing attention to sickle cell disease makes a difference in your case. Because there's so much attention on the disease of addiction, and that does not seem to have made a difference in changing the way the government allocates funding and provides treatments to those affected by the opioid crisis. This epidemic impacts so many families and is constantly in the news, especially about the rising death statistics among our generation. It's hard not to feel hopeless because every day there are less and less of us to bend that arc.
I care about those little children in cages. I mean, how could those people just follow orders and take children, even babies, away from their parents? You know, I couldn't stop imagining how my little cousin would feel if someone just separated her from my aunt and then watched her cry all alone. I remember reading about the Trail of Tears in 1831. 16,000 Native Americans were marched out of their homeland for 1,200 miles, and 4,000, including many children, died of disease and of starvation. I remember thinking, how did people actually let that happen? After learning about atrocities committed in the past, we were always reassured by our teachers by the conviction, never again. Never again would the world stand by while these atrocities happened. But never again is happening again, right here, right now.
I really admired the woman who climbed the Statue of Liberty. What was her name? Oh, it was Ernest. Thank you. She climbed as a protest against locking kids in cages. Remember, when they go low, we go high? When they go lower and lower, the race went higher and higher. She was fierce. It was epic. But then she got arrested for civil disobedience. So what's left for us to do? Sign a petition that says no kids in cages? Really? Just a petition for this outrage?
No disrespect to Michelle, but when they go low, we go high. Just didn't clap back hard enough.
How about when they go low, we go vote?
You know, voting might be the only chance we have to fight back against all the injustice, even redeem the values of our country.
You know, voting's great. I vote, but that on its own is not enough. Voting should be the least you can do. You also have to work on figuring out your values. And once you do that, figure out ways you can actively work to live up to those values. I'm not saying we all gotta do something as dramatic as climb the Statue of Liberty, but if something really matters to you, we all gotta figure out something that pushes back, that stops the arc from going in the wrong direction. Look, here's the thing. I look at it like this. I try to stay healthy by running to work every day. Running is my baseline. If I didn't do anything else, at least I ran to work. But just running is not going to get me into shape. I try to incorporate lots of other exercises into my workout. It's the same with voting. Voting is your baseline. You gotta keep thinking about what else you can do to actively engage in the areas that go against your values.
Running is my reach. Walking is my baseline. And to continue with your metaphor, voting, as it turns out, also suddenly became my reach because it's currently under threat from a number of different directions. Even though I have only one vote, I wanted to make it count. I had lost my Wisconsin license, but I brought proper ID and proof of address, which they did accept since I was registered at that address. However, they told me that I had to go to the DMV and get a new license before I could cast my vote. I suppose I could have made it there and back on time if running was my baseline, but like I said, it's not. My vote was not counted, and that's not right. Resistance is now my baseline.
I just want to live in a world where I can sit in my school's theater and not be stressed out because I'm worried about how to escape an active shooter. The thought goes through my head, especially when I'm in the auditorium, that someone could come in and storm us with an AK-47. We have drills for what to do when we are in a classroom, but they have never explained safety procedures for what to do in a theater. I'm trying to concentrate on performance, but I keep thinking that all of us sitting here, we could be next.
I have so much compassion for the students in Parkland. I participated in the walkout for gun control at my school, and I also participated in the March for Our Lives protest down at Boston Common. I often find myself wondering what Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, who is an activist for social and environmental justice, would have thought about these students who attend the school that was named in her honor.
You know, we could just ask them.
Again, one more time.
Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a sheep. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a sheep.
I really wanted to attend the 2018 graduation and tell my students that I too was profoundly affected by the massacre at my school. However, I didn't want my speech to take attention away from their commencement speeches. I proudly watched them as they stood in genuine solidarity at the March for Our Lives protest in Washington. I admired the way that they passed the mic to others who are suffering from the effects of gun violence, so I certainly did not want to take the mic from them at their graduation. The support that they gave each other at the rally in the Capitol made me deeply regret that I, as an active suffragette, did not do more to make sure that my African American sisters were welcomed as equals in the struggle to obtain the right to vote. We should have ensured that the most marginalized among us were heard and advocated for. There are valuable lessons to be learned from the social activism of our youth. I voted for the first time at the age of 30 when the 19th Amendment was finally passed in 1920, and I never missed an opportunity to exercise that right throughout my very long life. I received the best present on my 100th birthday in 1990 when the school in Parkland was named in my honor. I was very fortunate to live 8 more years to 108. My heart breaks that 14 of my students did not even survive their teenage years. If you want to honor these brave, hardworking, and grieving students who are organizing rallies throughout the country to support gun law reform, you must go to the polls and vote. It is their courage and conviction that has stirred and fortified me to speak to you now. Frederick Douglass, Dr. King, and I have visited you today because we have great faith in your generation. I leave you with this challenge. They say you need a village to raise a child. I also believe that you need a village to support you in your efforts to bend that heart towards justice. Please try to be that village for each other. I have to admit, when I think about the way it feels to have a connection with people on a shared issue, even my very old heart still skips a beat.
King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a sheep. Old King Cole was a merry old soul, and a merry old soul was a sheep.
I asked you all to try and participate with an open mind as we explored what really matters to us. Thank you all for participating, not only with open minds, but with open hearts.
I remember hearing the story of these builders in ancient Italy who were building a church. The churches in Italy are massive and really beautiful and take lifetimes to complete. People started building them knowing they would never get to see their church completely finished. Yet they still woke up every day. They put one stone after another stone on top of another stone, contributing to the beautiful archways, even though they knew that they would never be able to worship there. Being engaged in and committed to doing work that is helping make the world a more beautiful place for others, and one that I would want to live in, is like I'm building that church. That church that I may never get to see completely finished.
The audacity of amazing grace.
The audacity of faith that we can bend the arc towards justice.
The audacity of hope that we will be 4 million strong.
Xavier.
Andy.
Theo.
Sydney.
Denata.
Miles.
Ellie.
Alexa.
Rosie.
We are not just nameless members of a generation that have been given a label.
We are all individuals with our own names, with our own hopes and dreams for the future of our world.
Who are you?